The CEO ignored her during the interview until she said, "You don't remember me, do you?" He was the CEO no one dared to challenge. She was just another quiet candidate in a sea of interviews, until she said one sentence that changed everything. What came next wasn't in her resume, and definitely not in his plans. Because before the fame, before the fortune, they had a past he tried to bury, but now it was back, and it was here to collect every promise he broke. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now let's get back to the story. "You're 5 minutes late." Adrian Colehart didn't even glance up from the file in front of him. His voice was smooth, clipped, the kind of tone that ended meetings before they started. Elena Marlowe stood perfectly still in the doorway, spine straight, hands clasped lightly in front of her. Her silk blouse caught the morning light through the towering glass windows behind him. The silence that followed his words wasn't awkward. It was intentional. Then, calmly, too calmly, she stepped forward and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" He froze. The pen in his hand stopped mid-word, hanging in the air like the beginning of an apology that would never come. For the first time since she entered, he looked up, and something behind those steel blue eyes cracked, just for a second. But she saw it. The office was immaculate. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the London skyline. Every surface gleamed, chrome, glass, power, the kind of room that intimidated most people before a single word was said. But Elena didn't flinch. She moved with the grace of someone who'd already lost once and had nothing left to fear. "Ms. Marlowe," he began, sitting back slowly, tone shifting into something unfamiliar. "I believe we're here to discuss a consulting position, not personal history." His voice had softened, not warm, but not cold either, cautious. Still, she didn't sit. Instead, she reached into her structured beige handbag and pulled out a thin black notebook worn at the edges. She placed it on the table, not forcefully, but deliberately, just within his reach. Adrian looked at it but didn't touch it. "You once said the most valuable ideas come from silence," she said softly. "You used to write them in that notebook before your name was on every glass tower in Mayfair." He blinked. Once, twice, then leaned forward, just enough to see her clearly. "Elena!" The name landed differently this time. He said it like it hurt to remember. 15 years earlier, that notebook had pages filled with late-night dreams and impossible ideas, written by two kids who never believed they'd be anything but ordinary. Back then, he was just Adrian from the estate, with a brilliant mind and scuffed shoes. And she was the girl who let him sit at her table when no one else did. The girl with warm hands and sharp wit. The girl who once stayed up with him on the school library floor, rewriting an application essay until dawn. But that was long before the headlines, before the betrayal, before he disappeared. Or so she thought. "I didn't come here for a job," she said suddenly, her voice trembling, not from weakness, but from memory. He stood now, slowly, tall, imposing. But something in his posture had lost its sharp edge. "Then why are you here?" he asked. "To see if you'd even look me in the eye," she said. And she was gone before he could respond. Earlier that morning, Elena had stared at her reflection in the mirrored lift doors, her blouse neatly pressed, hair twisted back in a loose bun that didn't try too hard. She'd whispered to her own reflection just once, "You don't need to forgive, just be heard." She had no illusions about what this meeting was. She wasn't naive anymore, but still she carried the notebook, the same one he gave her the day before his scholarship interview. "So we don't forget where we started," he had said. She had kept it all these years, and today it was her truth. Back downstairs in the lobby, Elena exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. She walked past the waiting area, where polished assistants typed furiously into their phones, and sat quietly in the cafe, tucked behind a marble pillar. "Flat white oat milk," she told the barista, voice calm. As she waited, an elderly man at the next table struggled to open a packet of sugar with his stiff fingers. Without thinking, Elena leaned over and helped him. "Ah," he smiled, "chivalry isn't dead. It's just wearing pearls now." She laughed. Surprised. A real laugh. The man's name was Harold, and he asked her what kind of meeting could put that look on her face. "The kind where you see someone again, but they aren't who you hoped they'd be," she said quietly. Harold stirred his tea. "Maybe they are," he replied. "Maybe they're just hiding behind something they built." Upstairs, Adrian stood alone in the same room where she'd left him. The notebook still sat on the table. He hadn't moved it, but his hand now rested near it, like he was afraid to touch it, or afraid of what it might pull out of him. He could still remember her laugh, the way she used to bite her lip when she was reading something important. The last look she gave him the night he left for university. She'd waited for him. He never came back. That night, Eleanor returned to the small walk-up flat she shared with her cousin, Mary, and Mary's daughter, Ivy, a precocious 9-year-old with the blunt honesty of a Shakespearean fool. As they sat down to dinner, reheated shepherd's pie and buttered peas, Ivy looked up from her plate and said, "Did the rich man give you the job?" Elena smiled faintly. "I don't think he even knew who I was." Ivy tilted her head. "But you knew him, right? Maybe he's just pretending he didn't." Elena reached for her fork, pausing. Maybe. Her cousin Mary watched her closely. "Did you say what you needed to say?" "I left the notebook," Elena replied. That was enough. Mary reached across the table and squeezed her hand. A simple, wordless gesture. But across the city, in a penthouse lit by dim city lights, Adrian sat in silence. The notebook was open, and inside, on the first page, written in her handwriting from 15 years ago, was a line that shattered him. "No one becomes great by forgetting who held the ladder." The next morning, Elena received an envelope. No sender, no note, just a single sheet of paper, and one sentence in the middle. "Wednesday, 7 p.m., the rooftop at Hartley House. Bring the notebook." She stared at it, the rooftop where it all began. Worst, Hartley House hadn't changed much, not on the outside. The same faded stone arch welcomed her like an old friend who never moved on. The same rusted railing curled up the fire escape to the rooftop, where time had once stood still for two people who believed in impossible futures. Elena paused at the bottom of the steps, the cool October wind brushing loose strands of hair from her cheek. In her hand, the black notebook. No jacket, no expectations, just a quiet, tight ache in her chest that she refused to name. She climbed slowly, one step, then another, each creaking like a memory. The rooftop lights were on, not the bright, blinding kind, but soft strings of old bulbs, the kind used at second-hand weddings and forgotten garden parties. A small table stood near the edge with two mismatched chairs and a covered plate resting in the center. No sign of him, yet. The view stretched far, rooftops rolling over rooftops, chimneys, scattered lights, London breathing beneath her feet. For a moment it felt like stepping back into an old photograph, and then, from behind her, "I wasn't sure if you'd come." Elena turned. Adrian stood at the door, dressed not in a suit, but in a dark navy sweater and black jeans. No tie. No shield, his hair slightly wind-blown, as if he'd walked here. For once, he looked like a man, not a brand. "I almost didn't," she said honestly, watching his face as he approached. "But you wrote it in your own handwriting, so I knew it wasn't an assistant." A flicker of amusement passed through his eyes. "I've had to rethink how much I outsource," he replied, pulling the chair back for her to sit. She did, cautiously, placing the notebook on the table between them. like a line neither had crossed in years. "I remembered," he said softly. "Right after you left, it just hit me." Elena met his gaze. Did it feel like regret? Or just surprise? Adrian exhaled, then gently lifted the cover of the plate on the table. Underneath, 2 paper-wrapped shawarma wraps, warm and aromatic. She blinked, startled. "You remembered our last meal?" He nodded. "We couldn't afford 2. You let me have the bigger half." "I was hoping you'd notice that," she teased. And for a moment, a real moment, they both smiled. They ate in near silence, not from discomfort, but weight. Every bite carried years. "I read every page of the notebook last night," Adrian said, folding his wrapper neatly. "Your handwriting changes after the 6th entry. It got smaller, more cautious. That was the week you stopped replying to my messages." His eyes dropped. "I didn't think I was worth your time after you left," she added. "I didn't think I was worth anyone's time," he said quietly. "I had one shot to make something of myself, and I thought I had to let go of everything soft. You, that version of me." She studied him. "So you buried it all under expensive suits and investor dinners. And silence," he added. "A lot of silence." A small silence now passed between them, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind that carried shared history, that held a mirror to things unsaid. "Why now?" Elena finally asked. "Why reach out after all this time?" Adrian leaned back, the city lights flickering in his distant gaze. "Because yesterday I sat in a room full of people who know everything about me, except who I really am." He turned to her, expression raw. "And you walked in like a reminder of the boy I abandoned, not because he failed, but because I was afraid of what he felt." Elena held his gaze. "So what do you want from me?" "Adrian?" "I want to remember," he said, "with your help, if you'll let me." She was quiet for a long moment, her hands resting gently on the table, fingertips brushing the spine of the notebook. "This doesn't erase anything," she said. "I know. And I didn't come here to fall for nostalgia. I came to close something. Or maybe reopen it the right way." Adrian nodded. "Then let's start with this," he said, pulling out a small velvet pouch from his coat pocket. Inside, a charm bracelet, not flashy, silver, worn. One of the charms was a tiny ladder. "You gave me this when I got my scholarship," he said, voice low. "I've had it all these years, thought I lost it, found it again 3 weeks ago in an old box in the basement." He placed it beside the notebook. "I didn't know how much I'd forgotten until I saw it again." Elena picked up the bracelet, holding it between her fingers. "You know, this ladder charm wasn't just about ambition, right?" she asked gently. Adrian tilted his head. "It was about humility," she said. "You climb, yes, but you never kick it down behind you." He looked away, not out of arrogance, but shame. "That's why it matters to me that you saw me," she added. "Not just yesterday, but here. Now." He nodded slowly. "I see you, Elena," he said, with more honesty than she expected. "I see everything I should have seen back then." They stayed on the rooftop long after the food was gone, talking in circles, laughing quietly at old classmates' names, sharing fragments of who they'd become. At one point, a gust of wind blew a napkin off the table. It danced wildly through the air until Adrian chased it with an awkward half-run stumble that made her burst into laughter. "You used to be faster," she teased. "I used to be many things," he grinned, handing it back. "Foolish, broke, in love with a girl who smelled like lavender, and always made better decisions than I did." She looked at him. "That last one?" she said. "You still are." He froze, and that's when her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, eyes scanning the screen. Her smile faded. She read it again. A message from an unknown number. "Thought you should know. Adrian Colehart isn't as free as he seems. Ask him about Fiona Darrell. Before you fall for him again." She looked up. Adrian was watching her, something flickering behind his careful expression. "Elena?" he asked gently. She slipped the phone into her bag and said nothing. As they descended the rooftop stairs together, Elena walked one step behind him, her mind racing. Fiona Darrell, the name she hadn't heard in years, but it echoed with a warning. 2 days later, Elena stood alone in her cousin's kitchen, staring at the black notebook on the counter as the kettle clicked off behind her. The words from the anonymous message haunted her. Ask him about Fiona Darrell. Before you fall for him again. She hadn't told Adrian, not yet. She hadn't told Mary either, though her cousin was starting to notice the faraway look in her eyes and the way she stirred her tea without drinking it. The bracelet sat beside the notebook now, the ladder charm catching the morning light. 2 symbols of a love that once climbed high and fell silently. That evening, Mary finally cornered her. "Okay," she said, arms folded as she leaned on the doorframe. "You've been quiet for 48 hours. That's either heartbreak or plotting revenge." Elena smirked, but didn't lift her gaze from the notebook. Mary waited, then added gently, "You like him again, don't you?" "I don't know what I feel," Elena said softly. "It's like I'm standing in a house that burned down years ago, and I'm trying to decide if it's safe to walk through the ruins." Mary walked over and poured 2 cups of tea, passing one to her with a warm touch. "Just promise me," she said, "if the fire's still there, you won't be the only one left with burns." Across the city, in a glass tower Adrian didn't particularly like living in, he was nursing a late-night scotch when his sister, Celeste Colehart, walked in. She didn't knock. She never did. Celeste, older by 2 years, and possibly the only person who could unnerve him, dropped her designer bag on the couch and kicked off her heels. "I ran into Fiona at the gallery," she said, flopping down like a storm cloud in silk. Adrian's jaw tightened. "She said you've been avoiding her calls, and that she's still your fiancé." "I never proposed," he replied, sipping calmly. "She wears a ring," Celeste shot back. "She's not exactly doing that for fun." Adrian stood turning his back to the room, voice low. "It was an arrangement, one that served both of us, until it didn't." "You mean the joint firm?" Celeste asked. "Darrell and Colehart still has contracts signed under both your names. That's not the kind of tie you cut overnight." "She's threatening to talk." "Adrian, I don't care." "Well," Celeste said sharply, standing now, "maybe you should, because if Fiona decides to drag your name through the press, no amount of rooftop nostalgia is going to fix that." He turned to face her. "Leave Elena out of this." Celeste's eyes narrowed, not unkindly. "She's not in this yet. But if you want her to be, you better clean up what you left behind." By early November, Elena sat on a bench near Kensington Gardens, the crisp autumn air, brushing through the trees like whispered memories. She was early. Too early. For her coffee meeting with Adrian. Her stomach felt tight. He had invited her. Said he wanted to explain something. Said there was something he owed her. She didn't reply to the message. She just showed up. When he arrived, he was carrying 2 coffees. Her usual, flat white, oat milk, no sugar. She blinked. "You remembered?" He smiled. "It's not the kind of thing I forget anymore." They sat in silence for a moment. Birds flittered across the path. A child nearby insisted loudly that pigeons were just dirty angels, and Elena couldn't help but laugh. Adrian turned toward her, smile flickering. Then he said, "There's something I need to tell you about Fiona." Elena's fingers tightened slightly around the warm cup, but her face stayed calm. "I'm listening." Adrian exhaled. "We were involved. Years ago, I met her at a corporate event in Milan. She was smart, charming, strategic. We had similar ambitions. It made sense. On paper." "So she's a business relationship?" Elena asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "She was more than that, for a time. But not what I ever wanted permanently," he said. "Our families thought it was a good match, and I didn't push back hard enough. That's on me." "Did you ask her to marry you?" He looked her straight in the eye. "No, but I didn't stop her from thinking I might." "That's worse in some ways." She nodded slowly. And now? She's upset, he said honestly. Because I made it clear I've moved on, and because I never told her about you, or what you meant to me back then. Elena sipped her coffee. Let the silence linger. I should have told you sooner, Adrian said. You should have done a lot of things sooner, she replied, voice soft but firm. He swallowed hard. But, she added, you told me now, and that matters. They walked together through the gardens, the crunch of leaves underfoot. She watched a squirrel dart across the path with half a croissant in its mouth and smiled. There's something about second chances, she said quietly. They only work if you stop trying to control the narrative. Adrian looked at her. I'm trying. I know, she said, her voice warmer now. That's why I'm still here. A long pause. Then, would you have chosen me back then, she asked, if we'd both had the same chances? Adrian stopped walking. He turned to her, expression open, raw almost. I did choose you, he said. I just didn't have the courage to fight for it. As they parted at the garden gate, he handed her a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. Open it later, he said. When you feel ready. Back at home, in the quiet of her room, she sat on the edge of her bed and slowly unwrapped the paper. Inside was a photograph, faded, a little bent, from years ago. It was them, sitting on the library floor, books scattered, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. She had forgotten the moment ever existed. But he had kept it, on the back, written in pencil. The day I realized I didn't want to do any of it without you. Just as tears welled in her eyes, her phone lit up again. This time, not a message. A photo. Adrian with Fiona. At a gala from last night, standing close. Too close. Caption. Careful who you trust, Elena. The photo glared back at her. Adrian in a charcoal tuxedo. Fiona Darrell, dazzling in emerald silk, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They weren't smiling. Not exactly. But the proximity, the comfort of the pose. It said enough, or at least it wanted to. Elena stared at it on her phone screen. Her heart pounding. She'd just read the words on the back of the photo he gave her. The day I realized I didn't want to do any of it without you. And now this? Careful who you trust, Elena. No name, no number, just the message. Delivered like a whisper, designed to wound. She paced her small flat as Ivy and Mary watched from the couch. Ivy munched on a slice of toast with strawberry jam, her legs swinging beneath the coffee table, completely unfazed. Mary, on the other hand, had her arms crossed. Could be old, Mary said. You said he used to go to these galas with her, right? Elena shook her head. It's from last night. I recognize the dress. Fiona wore it to the fundraising auction at the Chamber of Commerce. It was in the news this morning. Mary's jaw tightened. And he didn't mention he'd be going? No. Ivy, without lifting her eyes from her toast, mumbled, maybe she trapped him with glitter. Both women turned to her. What? Ivy shrugged. She looks like the kind of lady who smells expensive and throws tiny tantrums. Later that afternoon, Elena sat in a quiet cafe tucked between two bookstores in Notting Hill. She chose a corner table, far from the windows, somewhere she could think. The black notebook was open beside her, untouched. The bracelet lay coiled like a question mark. She stirred her tea over and over, not drinking, the silver spoon clinking against the cup in slow rhythm. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but she also didn't want to be played. Again. That's when the doorbell above the cafe chimed, and Fiona Darrell walked in. She was even more striking in person, tall, poised, with perfectly glossed lips and a face that wore confidence like silk. Her eyes swept the room once before landing on Elena. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight over. Elena Marlowe, she said, her tone smooth but cutting, I was wondering when we'd finally meet. Elena closed the notebook slowly. Have a seat if you're here for honesty. Fiona smiled. All teeth and cold charm. Oh, darling, I'm never here for less. They sat across from each other, two women dressed in wildly different ways, one crisp and effortless, the other curated and deliberate, both holding back fire. I assume you saw the photo, Fiona began, placing her designer bag gently on the table. Elena nodded. Anonymous message. Impressive reach. Fiona didn't flinch. Sometimes people need help seeing the truth, or the version of it that benefits you. A pause. Fiona's smile didn't fade, but her gaze sharpened. You think Adrian has changed, she said. You think that notebook, or the bracelet, or those late-night walks mean he's a new man? Maybe, Elena replied calmly. Or maybe he's finally remembering who he was. Fiona leaned in, her voice soft. I gave him 7 years. 7 years of dinners, events, press conferences. I stood beside him when investors doubted him, when his father collapsed from the pressure. I was his shield. Elena's throat tightened, but she kept her posture. And yet, she said slowly, he's still thinking about someone else. Fiona blinked, a beat of silence. Then she stood, adjusting her coat. Careful, Elena, she said, voice lower now. He builds walls out of charm and apology, but when you lean on them, they crumble. She walked away without looking back. That night Adrian called. Elena didn't answer. He texted instead. Saw the photo. I can explain everything. Please meet me tomorrow. My office. Noon. She stared at the message, then at the bracelet beside her bed. The tiny ladder charm glinted again, no longer just a symbol of memory, but now of choice. The next morning she arrived at Colehart and Vale again. This time the receptionist looked up with a different expression. Ms. Marlowe, Mr. Colehart said to send you up right away. She nodded, climbed the familiar elevator, and stepped into the same glass office where it all began. Adrian was already waiting. No assistant, no files, just him. This time he stood up as she entered. Elena. She said nothing, just sat. He exhaled. The photo, the gala. She folded her hands calmly. Talk. It wasn't what it looked like, Adrian began. I've heard that line before, she said. He nodded, accepting it. I was invited last minute. A major investor was withdrawing support, and I had to fix it. Fiona's family was there, and she appeared beside me just before the press photos started. And you didn't push her away? Elena asked. She knows the angles. I didn't want to cause a scene in front of the cameras. So you let her hold your arm, Elena said. Even after everything. I handled it badly, he admitted, but I didn't go there for her. I didn't speak with her beyond what was necessary. I've made it clear we're not together, and haven't been for over a year. And yet, she said, you never told me her name until I had to ask. His jaw tightened. Because I was ashamed of how long I let that relationship exist. It was easy, strategic, and completely hollow. She looked down at the black notebook now resting on his desk. Then what's this, Adrian? Strategy? Or something real? He walked around the desk, sat beside her, but not behind her, and reached into the drawer. He pulled out something small, a slip of folded paper. When he handed it to her, she recognized it instantly, her old handwriting. A note she'd passed him in year 13, folded in a triangle like kids do in school. Don't forget who you are, even if the world does. She had no memory of writing it. But he'd kept it for over a decade. I didn't just remember you, Elena, he said softly. I remembered me, because of you. They sat in silence again. This time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was layered, heavy, hopeful. I need time, she said finally. To think, he nodded. I'll wait, however long. As Elena walked out of the office, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voice message. From a blocked number. She hesitated, then pressed play. You're not the first girl he's promised the world to, and you won't be the last. Click, no name, no proof. But the voice? It sounded exactly like Fiona. The voice message echoed in Elena's mind long after it ended. You're not the first girl he's promised the world to, and you won't be the last." She stood in the middle of a quiet side street just off St. James's Park, the city carrying on around her. Buses groaning by, tourists laughing, the wind turning corners with that early November bite. But all of it blurred beneath the weight of that voice. She hadn't saved it, couldn't, didn't want it on her phone. But she didn't need to. The tone, the confidence, the deliberate cruelty, it was unmistakably Fiona. That evening, Mary made soup. It wasn't fancy, just red lentils, sweet potato, ginger and lemon, but it was warm and filling and full of sisterhood. The kind of meal that reminded you to sit still and be human for a minute. Ivy sat cross-legged at the table, carefully peeling the paper off a cupcake like it was a bomb. Mary passed Elena a bowl and nudged her arm. "No phones, no men, just soup." Elena smiled weakly. "I wish I could turn it off like that." "You can," Mary said. "You just have to stop thinking you owe people explanations for their bad behavior." Elena stirred the soup, watching the steam rise. "I believe him," she said, barely above a whisper. But believing someone and trusting them again are two different muscles," Mary finished. Elena looked over. "I saw the way he looked at you when he came to the house that night," Mary added, "like he was terrified you'd vanish. People fake a lot of things, Lena. But not that." The next morning, Elena sat at a window seat in the public library near Portobello Road. Her fingers traced the edge of a well-worn page in a poetry book she wasn't reading. She didn't come for the words, she came for the quiet, and for the memory of the time she and Adrian used to sit in places like this, long before marble offices and headline scandals, back when a shared apple and a walk home in the rain meant everything. The black notebook was in her bag. She still carried it. She still didn't know why. A soft knock on the wood frame startled her. She turned, and Fiona Darrell was standing there, again. "Do you always show up uninvited?" Elena said, standing slowly. "I like finishing what I start." Fiona stepped closer. No press, no cameras, just a silk scarf, perfect makeup, and eyes like sharpened glass. "I'm not here to argue," she said. "I'm here to warn you, because you seem like the type who thinks love can fix what trauma built." Elena crossed her arms. "You and Adrian were together for 7 years," Fiona continued. "Do you know how many times he said you were a closed chapter? That he only looked back on that part of his life with, what was the word? Fondness." She leaned in. "Not longing, not love, fondness. That's what he used to say to everyone." Elena's heart clenched, but she stayed calm. "Then why do you sound so threatened?" Fiona's jaw tensed. "Because I made him," she snapped. "I stood behind him when his own board tried to vote him out. I helped him design the very brand that's on his cufflinks. And now he's walking away. For a girl with a notebook and a memory." Elena looked at her squarely. "No, he's walking away from you, whether or not I'm in the picture." That cut landed. Fiona exhaled slowly, fixing her posture, smoothing her coat. "You'll regret this, Elena." Elena stepped closer. "Maybe. But at least if I do, I'll know it was my choice. Not because I let someone else bully me out of believing in a man who's trying to do better." Fiona didn't respond. She just walked out, heels clicking like punctuation. That night, Adrian sent a message. "There's a gala this weekend. Black tie. Public. I want to take you. If you're ready. If not, I'll go alone." Elena didn't respond right away. She sat at the kitchen table with Ivy, who was coloring quietly while sipping hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. "You look like you're trying to do maths in your head," Ivy said without looking up. "Maybe I am," Elena replied. "What's the problem? A man who wants to show me off to the world but forgot to protect me from it first." Ivy paused, then added, "If someone gave me their last cookie and then told everyone it didn't mean anything, I'd throw the next cookie in their face." Elena blinked, then laughed. "Well, that's a visual. But," Ivy added, licking chocolate off her lip, If they said they were really sorry and gave me another one in private and public, maybe I'd keep it. Elena tilted her head. A cookie analogy, she murmured. That actually works. She answered Adrian's message at 11:03 p.m. I'll go, but I'm not dressing up for your board, I'm dressing up for me, he replied instantly. Then I'll be the luckiest man in the room. Gala night. The venue, Hollingsworth Hall. Marble floors, chandeliers, gowns that cost more than a month's rent. Journalists hovered, champagne flowed, and ambition clinked in every glass. When Adrian arrived, all eyes turned. He was alone, for exactly 43 seconds. Then Elena entered, wearing a floor-length deep emerald dress, satin, off-shoulder with delicate buttons down the back. Her hair was softly pinned, pearls in her ears and on her wrist. The silver bracelet, with the ladder charm. Symbol of the night, of dignity, of survival, of choice. Adrian met her at the bottom of the marble stairs, offering his arm. Not out of habit, but respect. She took it. The cameras flashed. Inside, as they moved through the sea of names and faces, Adrian leaned close and whispered, "You don't have to speak to anyone you don't want to. If you feel overwhelmed, just signal me. Scratch your bracelet." Elena turned toward him, caught off guard. "You notice that?" "I notice everything now," he said. She smiled softly, but the warmth didn't last long. Halfway through the night, as they stood near the balcony, a familiar voice broke the moment. "Adrian, darling, you forgot your lines." Fiona, in crimson velvet, with a smile that dripped venom. Adrian's jaw clenched. Elena's grip on his arm didn't loosen. "Let's not do this here," he said, voice cool. Fiona stepped closer. "No? Then let's do it somewhere better." She turned to Elena and dropped her final card. "I told him I was pregnant 2 months ago. Did he mention that?" Elena froze. The room blurred. The lights, the music, the crystal. Adrian didn't move, didn't deny it, didn't confirm it, just looked at her with a kind of heartbreak that wasn't an answer. For 3 full seconds, no one breathed. The ballroom continued around them. Clinking glasses, laughter, murmured greetings, but between Adrian, Elena, and Fiona, time had stopped cold. "I told him I was pregnant 2 months ago." Fiona's voice still lingered like perfume you didn't ask for. The words were perfectly delivered, not loud enough to draw a crowd, but just loud enough to burn. Elena's hand slowly dropped from Adrian's arm. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. And for Elena, that silence was louder than any lie. Finally, Adrian stepped forward, voice low and restrained. "Fiona, don't do this here." "No?" she smiled. "Why not? You're already playing Prince Charming with your childhood sweetheart. Don't you think she deserves the full fairy tale?" "Elena," Adrian turned to her now, tone shifting, urgent but gentle. "We need to talk, privately." She held his gaze, but her expression had changed. Not anger, not heartbreak, something colder, doubt, and Adrian felt it like a punch to the chest. They moved to a side corridor near the kitchens, away from the cameras and the violins. Elena stood with her back to the wall, arms folded, bracelet gleaming beneath the lights. Adrian paced once, then stopped. "It's not true." Her voice came quieter than he expected. "You're sure?" "Yes." "Because the way you looked back there, it didn't feel like a lie." He stepped closer, hands at his sides. "She said she was late, that she thought she was. I asked for proof. She said she'd get it. Then she ghosted me for 6 weeks. Until tonight." Elena's heart was pounding now, her mind a maze of timelines, possibilities, disappointments she thought she'd already survived. "And you didn't think I deserved to know that conversation even happened?" she asked. "I was trying to protect you." "No," she said firmly. "You were trying to protect your control over the story." There was no shouting, no sobbing, only truth being peeled back, layer by uncomfortable layer. "I didn't want to give Fiona another inch," Adrian admitted. I didn't want her to think she could use it to keep me tied to her life. But she already has, Elena said. Because now I don't know what's real between us and what's just you trying to fix something you broke 10 years ago. His shoulders dropped. I was never trying to fix the past, he said. I was trying to earn the future with you. Silence again. Then, I need time, Adrian. I understand, she turned to leave. But then he reached out gently, brushing her hand, not forceful, just enough to let her feel that warmth, the connection. I'll wait, Elena, he said softly, even if it breaks me. She looked down at their hands, then back up at his eyes, and walked away. Back at home, Elena closed the bedroom door behind her and sat on the edge of the bed. The emerald dress pooled around her feet like the weight of everything she had tried not to hope for. She opened the black notebook and turned to the back pages. There, between old ink stains and pressed memories, was a tiny envelope. Unopened, one she'd hidden from herself all these years. It was from Adrian, dated the week he left for university. Inside, a short letter. If I go now, it's because I'm not strong enough to stay, but I will come back when I'm someone who deserves to stand beside you. She read it twice, then pressed the paper to her chest. The next morning, she found Mary at the breakfast table, scrolling the news. Want to guess who's trending? Mary asked. Elena didn't answer. Mary turned the screen toward her. Headline: Fiona Darrell, accused of fabricating pregnancy to secure stake in Colehart Holdings. Elena blinked. What? Mary clicked the article open. According to compliance documents reviewed by the board and leaked to the press, no official medical records or documentation were ever provided by Ms. Darrell, who has been unreachable since the gala. A senior board advisor, speaking under condition of anonymity, suggested that Fiona's claims may have been an attempt to regain control over Adrian Colehart's public image and the company's internal decisions. Elena stared at the screen, and then, slowly, she smiled. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. Ivy opened it before anyone else could. Standing there, not in a suit, not in expensive leather shoes, but in jeans, a gray jumper, and holding 2 takeaway coffees, was Adrian. I brought peace offerings, he said to Ivy, kneeling to her level. What flavor? Flat white for your aunt, and hot chocolate with a giant marshmallow for the Queen of Honesty. Ivy grinned. You may approach. In the kitchen, Adrian handed Elena her coffee and took a careful step back. She raised an eyebrow. You're giving me space inside my own home now? I told you I'd wait, he said. Doesn't mean I can't bring caffeine. She smiled softly, the smallest lift at the corner of her mouth. So, Fiona? She vanished, he said. But the board knows now. The press will too by tomorrow. I had to say something, not just for me, he paused, but for you. Elena leaned against the counter, taking a slow sip. You handled it with dignity, she said, more than I expected. That's what you've always brought out in me, he replied. Better taste in coffee, he laughed. No, courage. They sat at the tiny kitchen table side by side, not touching, but something had changed, something had steadied. You kept the note, Adrian said suddenly, the one I wrote before I left. Elena nodded. I forgot it was there. He looked at her. I didn't. And then from his coat pocket, he pulled out something she hadn't seen in 15 years, the second charm, a tiny heart-shaped lock. I bought it before I left, he said. Was going to give it to you at the train station, but I lost the nerve. She stared at it, eyes wide. You kept it all this time? He nodded. Can I? He asked, holding it out. She held out her wrist, and together he clipped it next to the ladder. Later that night, as she checked her email before bed, a new message caught her eye. Subject: You should know what he's planning. Attached: a scanned legal document, an offer, Adrian's shares, being quietly transferred to someone else, and not her. Elena stared at the screen. The document was real, watermarked, time-stamped, professionally formatted. Her name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Adrian Colehart, proposed transfer of majority ownership. Beneficiary, Celeste Colehart, his sister. Not a board member, not a partner, but his blood. Elena read the fine print 3 times. It wasn't about stock options or temporary shifts. He was relinquishing control. Quietly, permanently, no explanation, no message, just the cold, calculated paper trail of a man letting go, of his empire, of his legacy, of something. The next day, Adrian called. She didn't answer. He called again, and again. Finally, she sent a message. "Meet me where it all started, if you still believe I deserve the truth." At 4 p.m., she waited on the same library steps where they'd studied all those years ago, where he once scribbled dreams in a tattered notebook and kissed her cheek when he thought no one was looking. Adrian arrived wearing that gray coat she used to tease him about, the one that makes you look like you're trying to join the MI6. But today, it looked softer, worn, familiar, like him. He sat beside her, not too close, not too far. "You found the papers?" he said quietly. She didn't nod. She didn't move. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Why do I have to keep finding out your truths from strangers in inboxes?" Adrian ran a hand through his hair, looking down at his shoes, "because telling you would have made it real." She turned to face him, expression unreadable. "And what is it exactly?" He finally looked up, and what she saw in his eyes made her chest tighten. It wasn't shame, it was grief. "I've been stepping back," he said slowly. "Because I've been unwell. Silence. I was diagnosed last year with a degenerative condition, neurological, rare, genetic." Elena didn't speak. Her throat closed instantly. "It's early," he continued, "but it's progressive, no cure. It might move slowly, or not, no one knows yet." A beat passed. "But I know what it did to my father. I watched him lose everything, not just his company, but his dignity." Elena's eyes welled, not dramatically, just the way heartbreak enters quietly, like fog through an open window. "You were going to say goodbye," she whispered. "Weren't you?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "I was going to leave the company," he said, voice strained. "Quietly. Hand it to Celeste. Travel. Disappear." "And me?" Elena asked. "Was I just a goodbye you wanted to sweeten?" "No," he said sharply. "You were the only part I was still afraid to lose." He turned to her, full of emotion now. "You brought back something I thought I'd buried. I felt alive again, human. And I didn't want to taint that with sickness or pity or timelines I can't control." She held his gaze. "I would have stayed," she said, "if you'd told me." "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't." He looked down at his hands. Voice quieter now. "I've started putting things in order with Celeste, the legal side, the company, the shares, just preparing in case the illness moves faster than I'd like." She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. They sat in silence for a long time. Two people with too many truths and not enough time. Later that night, Elena made chamomile tea. She sat in the living room in her robe, the black notebook open on her lap. Ivy was asleep. Mary had gone to bed early. There, in the corner pocket of the notebook, she found a photo she had never noticed. Her and Adrian, younger, laughing, and behind them, the first ladder he ever built with scrap wood from the school theater set. A real one, small, crooked, but strong enough to hold them both. He built it for her so she could hang the stars on their makeshift set for the senior play. A symbol, always. The ladder. She picked up her phone, typed, deleted, typed again. Finally she sent, "Then let me walk through this with you." Not as someone who feels sorry, but as someone who remembers who you are, even when you forget. He replied within minutes. "I'm at the garden where we saw that old couple dancing in the rain. Bring the notebook." She smiled softly and grabbed her coat. Kensington Gardens, empty this time of night, but safe, peaceful. She found him sitting on their old bench, a blanket folded beside him. He didn't speak, just opened his arms, and she went to him, not because everything was okay, but because this time they weren't hiding anymore. They sat under the wide oak trees, the moonlight pale and full. He pulled something from his coat pocket, something wrapped in tissue, a tiny pendant, a golden star. "To go with the ladder," he said, "for the one who always reached higher." He clipped it to her bracelet, next to the ladder and the lock. 3 charms now, dreams, promises, and light. As they held each other beneath the sky, a quiet flash came from behind the trees, a camera, paparazzi. Within minutes, gossip blogs began citing sources close to the board, claiming the CEO's sudden withdrawal was due to an undisclosed illness. And an email hit every major outlet within minutes. CEO resigns after secret illness revealed. Romantic involvement with ex-girlfriend sparks PR scandal. It happened overnight. By the time the sun rose, their private bench beneath the oaks was on every homepage in the country. A single photo. Elena's head resting gently against Adrian's shoulder, the black notebook on her lap, his arm around her, soft smiles. A quiet kind of peace, the kind no one was meant to see. And next to the image, bold headlines screamed, "Colehart walks away, secret illness revealed in midnight romance." Ex-girlfriend or power player, Elena Marlowe identified as new figure in corporate shakeup. A fairy tale or a cover story? Elena's phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, messages, emails, news alerts, a request for a comment from 5 different media outlets. All before 9 a.m. in the flat, Mary shoved the curtain closed as Ivy sat at the kitchen table pretending to eat cereal, but mostly just staring. "People are saying you seduced him back into your life for money," Mary said, voice sharp. "They're saying he's resigning because of you." Elena didn't flinch. "Let them." "But they're—" "I said," she repeated gently, "let them." Then she picked up the bracelet from the counter. The ladder, the lock, the star. She slipped it on, tighter than usual. Meanwhile, Adrian's office was on fire, metaphorically and nearly literally. Celeste Colehart stood at the head of the boardroom table, sleeves rolled, hair up, phone pressed to her ear as 5 different stakeholders argued in her other. "Damage control is in process," she said. "Yes, the shares are real. Yes, he's still stepping back. No, I'm not replacing him because of this. I'm replacing him because it was the plan." She hung up. Turned to her assistant. "Where is my brother?" "Disappeared after the story dropped," the young man replied. "He's not answering anyone." Celeste swore under her breath, but part of her, the part that had always protected Adrian from the world's knives, wasn't angry. She was scared, because she knew what kind of pressure this attention would put on him, and what he tended to do when he felt cornered. Elena found him near midday, not in the office, not at the penthouse, but at a children's hospice center in East London, one of his charities, quiet, undisclosed, no press, no plaque with his name. He sat at the edge of a small outdoor sandbox, legs crossed, helping a 6-year-old boy build a crooked castle out of wet sand and leftover hope. Elena didn't speak. She just sat beside him, gently placing a coffee beside his foot. He looked at her, eyes heavy, but not empty. "They took it, didn't they?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Every word." "And us?" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small, a Polaroid camera. Snapped a photo of him, right there, sand-covered hands, hair windswept, eyes sad and still beautiful. Then she turned the photo over and scribbled, "You're still allowed to have good moments, even when the world is watching." She handed it to him. Adrian looked down at it like it was a gift no one had ever thought to give him before. Then whispered, "Thank you." Later that night, they sat at Elena's kitchen table with Mary, Ivy, and 2 steaming bowls of vegetable stew. Nothing fancy, just warm and real. So, Mary said, breaking the quiet, if someone leaves a threatening comment on my bakery's Instagram about my sister seducing a CEO, is it okay to throw a cinnamon roll at them? Ivy looked up. Only if it's stale, otherwise it's a waste. Everyone laughed. Even Adrian, quietly but genuinely. Elena passed him a bowl. He looked at it, then at her. You keep feeding me humble food, he said, and I might start thinking I don't miss expensive ones. You never liked them anyway, she replied. You just liked what they meant. After dinner, Ivy slipped away to draw. Mary scrolled her phone dramatically, muttering about internet goblins, and Elena walked Adrian to the door. I can't protect you from the press, he said quietly, or what people assume. I don't need protecting, she replied. I need you to stand with me, even when it's hard. I will, he promised, if you still want me to. She reached for his hand, held it. I don't need a fairy tale, she said. Just the truth, the present, and someone who doesn't run when the lights get bright. Adrian touched her wrist. The charms. Then we're still climbing, he said. Right? She smiled, always. But the press didn't stop, and neither did Fiona. 2 days later, a glossy interview dropped on a high-profile morning show. Exclusive, Fiona Darrell breaks her silence on the Adrian Colehart scandal. She sat in a velvet chair. Perfect posture, voice honeyed with sorrow. I loved him, she said to the camera. I still do. But he chose nostalgia over stability, and now the company's future's uncertain, all because of a woman who doesn't understand what she's walking into. The host leaned in. Are you saying she manipulated him? Fiona smiled. I'm saying people cling to the past when they're afraid of the future, and now he's vulnerable. That's what makes it dangerous. That afternoon, Celeste called Elena. Her voice was sharp, but not unkind. I need to speak with you, alone, about what happens next. Next? Eleanor asked. About the shares. And your name, because whether you like it or not, it's now tied to this company. Elena paused, then said, I'll come, but I'm not there to prove myself. Celeste replied, Good, I'm not here to test you. I'm here to see if you're ready for the storm that's still coming. Part 8, Cliffhanger. Elena arrived at Colehart and Vale later that day. But the moment she stepped into Celeste's office, Fiona was already sitting there, smiling, waiting. The air inside Celeste Colehart's office was tense enough to slice. Glass walls, dark wood, crisp orchid in the corner, everything in the room was composed, except the atmosphere. Elena stepped in and paused. Celeste stood by the window, arms crossed, unreadable. And seated near the desk, legs crossed, velvet heels tapping a slow, smug rhythm against the floor, was Fiona Darrell. Didn't expect to see you here, Elena said calmly. Fiona offered a tight smile. That's funny. I was thinking the same thing. Celeste didn't move from the window. Her voice was cool but precise. Ladies, sit now. Elena took the chair farthest from Fiona, setting her structured beige bag gently at her side. She straightened her blouse cuffs, calm, poised, but ready for war if needed. Celeste turned, walked to the head of the table, and placed a thick file down with a soft thud. I didn't call this meeting to rehash the past, she said. I called it to prevent the future from exploding. Fiona tilted her head, saccharine sweet. You mean your brother's little PR meltdown? Celeste's eyes didn't flicker. I mean this company, our family's name, and the man you both claim to care about, whether out of love or strategy. That landed. For both of them. Elena, Celeste began, you're smart. You're not here because of charity, and despite what half the country thinks, you're not the problem. Then why is she here? Elena asked, motioning toward Fiona. Fiona answered for herself. Because I still own part of Adrian's brand, and because whether you like it or not, I know how this world works. You don't. Elena smiled thinly. Remind me, are you the one who faked a pregnancy or the one who leaked photos of a grieving man? Fiona's smile faltered. Just a hair. Celeste sighed. Enough. Here's the situation. Adrian is stepping down. Quietly, you, she said to Fiona, are still tied to several licensing agreements, including your joint consultancy firm. Fiona nodded. Daryl and Colehart, my name is still on that door. And you, Celeste turned to Elena, are now publicly and emotionally linked to a man the world assumes is broken. Elena's eyes didn't waver. He's not broken. He's rebuilding. Good, Celeste said, because if you stay, you'll have to build with him, while the entire world watches and waits for you to fail. A silence fell. Fiona broke it with a small laugh. You're going to let her stay in his life, just like that? I don't let people do anything, Celeste replied coolly. But I do control the fallout, she turned to Elena. If you're serious about him, if you're not just passing through nostalgia on your way back to your real life, then you need to decide something now. Elena folded her hands. I'm listening. Celeste opened the file. Inside, another set of documents. That joint venture proposal, a public initiative, a rebrand, one built around legacy, transparency, and healing. Elena, she said, I want you to co-lead a new foundation with Adrian, one that supports families dealing with degenerative illness, in his name, with your voice. But it means stepping into the light. Press, donors, scrutiny? Elena blinked. Why me? Because you're the only one he listens to, Celeste said, and the only one who still makes him laugh. Fiona's expression darkened. This is ridiculous, she said. He's not going to commit to her publicly, not after everything we built together. Celeste didn't flinch. Oh, Fiona, he already did the moment he let that photo get taken and didn't run from it. Fiona stood. I will not be replaced by some, old flame in a pencil skirt who still believes in fairy tales. Elena met her gaze, voice steady. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to stand beside him when you couldn't. Fiona's face froze. And with a final glance at Celeste, she grabbed her purse and walked out, this time without a word. Silence. Then Celeste sat back in her chair and exhaled, long and slow. She'll be back, Elena said. I know, Celeste replied, but not with power. Later that night, Elena found herself sitting at the rooftop of her building, wrapped in an oversized knit sweater, sipping mint tea from a chipped ceramic mug. Adrian joined her quietly. He handed her something small, a stone, smooth, dark, and heart-shaped. I picked it up at the hospice garden last year, he said. Didn't know why I kept it, but I think it was waiting for you. She turned it over in her palm. It was simple, warm from his hand. You gave your sister a lot of control, she murmured. She gave it back, he said, in her way. They sat in silence, legs tucked close, city lights flickering below. Then softly, Elena said, Do you really want to do this? He looked at her. All of it, not the cameras, not the headlines. Me, my family, my tiny flat, my weird cousin and her sarcastic daughter. The days when my anxiety wins and I shut down for hours. The part of me that's still angry you left all those years ago. He reached for her hand. I want all of it, he said, even the parts that don't want me back. She placed the stone in his palm. This means no more secrets. No more secrets, he promised. She lifted her wrist. Then help me with this. He smiled, took the bracelet, and with both hands fastened a new charm. The stone, drilled, smoothed, and strung. Between the ladder and the lock. The star now, foundation. At 3:12 a.m., Adrian's phone buzzed. He didn't wake, but Elena did. The message on the screen read, We need to meet. There's something you don't know about your father's company and why they pushed you out. It was signed, The Real Reason You Were Chosen. Anonymous. The message was still glowing on Adrian's phone screen when Elena quietly slid out of bed. There's something you don't know about your father's company and why they pushed you out. The real reason you were chosen. No name, no number, no reply option. Elena stared at the words, the weight of them, the threat wrapped in curiosity. Adrian stirred behind her, turning slightly beneath the covers, his brow furrowed even in sleep. She didn't wake him. Not yet. She simply took the phone, placed it on the nightstand, and sat beside him, watching the first hint of dawn press itself against the horizon. Some truths don't come gently, some you have to be ready to bleed for. Later that morning, Adrian poured her coffee before she asked. "Still oat milk?" he teased. "Forever and always," she replied with a small smile, though something in her voice trembled. "I had a strange message last night," he said suddenly, sliding his phone toward her. "Did you see it?" She nodded. "I did." "Do you think it's real?" Elena wrapped her hands around the mug. "I think whoever sent it wants to rattle you." "They're doing a great job," he muttered. By noon, Celeste was already ahead of them. She summoned both of them to the private records room beneath the original Colhart and Vale building, the part of the company no one photographed, no one visited, no one even spoke about unless legally required. When they arrived, she stood beside a locked cabinet. Her hands shook slightly as she removed a manila folder, one Adrian had never seen before. "Elena," she said, "you should stay for this. You're part of it now." Adrian looked from his sister to the folder, his voice low. "Is this about Dad?" Celeste nodded. "And about why, even before his illness started, the board didn't trust you." Inside the folder were two documents. The first, a memo from the board dated 12 years ago, before Adrian had even graduated from university. Subject, legacy risks, reputational concerns regarding Martin Colhart's alleged dealings. Adrian blinked. Reputational? Celeste took a breath. Dad made some deals, off-the-books ones. He was trying to grow too fast. Land, development, supplier contracts, the kind that would have put the company in the crosshairs if anyone ever traced it. "And they didn't tell me," Adrian said slowly, "because they thought I'd dig too deep." "No," Celeste said. "Because they thought you'd go public with it, and that would have destroyed the company overnight." Elena placed a hand on his arm. He didn't move, just stared at the paper like it was a ghost he'd known was coming but hoped never to see. The second document was worse. A letter, unsigned, from a former board advisor, accusing Martin Colhart of blackmailing a city official to approve a real estate permit in exchange for shares. Adrian stood, hard, abrupt. "Why didn't anyone say anything? Why did you all let me fight so hard to prove I could lead when you'd already decided I couldn't?" Celeste looked up, her voice quiet. "Because you could lead, but not without taking the fall for him." Adrian's throat tightened. "So they let me look weak, useless, sick. They let Fiona plant lies and the press spin chaos, because that was easier than admitting the truth." "Yes," Celeste said. He stepped away, toward the window, toward silence. Later that evening, Elena found him in their usual spot, the rooftop bench, city lights flickering like distant answers. He didn't speak when she sat. She just handed him something wrapped in a paper napkin. "Soup," she said, "still warm." He looked down at the little Tupperware container. "Is this how you fix everything?" "Only the things that deserve fixing." A pause, then, "Do you still want to build the foundation?" she asked. He nodded. "Now, more than ever." "Even with your father's name on it?" Adrian turned to her. "No," he said. "Not with his name." She blinked. "Then whose?" He looked her in the eyes. "Yours." The next day, Adrian called a press conference. He stood behind the podium looking nothing like the guarded CEO from months ago. No suit, no script, just a navy sweater, steady hands, and Elena standing off to the side, wearing the bracelet, the black notebook tucked in her arm like armor. He cleared his throat. "I stepped down because of my health, that part's true, but I stayed quiet about something else." He paused. My father, Martin Kohlhart, built this company, and also broke it in ways the public never saw. I am not my father, and I will not lead with shadows. A murmur passed through the crowd of journalists. Adrian continued, the foundation we're launching, the Marlowe Initiative, will support families facing degenerative illness, yes, but it will also fund transparency in corporate practices. It will be led by someone who knows how to stand through storms without breaking. He turned toward Elena. She taught me that. The cameras flashed. But in that moment, he wasn't posing. He was freeing himself. That night, at home, Elena pulled the ladder bracelet from her wrist. She added the final charm, a simple silver circle. Unmarked, smooth, endless. Adrian asked why that one. She smiled. Because we made it all the way through. A letter arrived 2 days later, handwritten, no return address. Inside, a single line. Your story's not over, and some legacies don't die quietly. Taped to it, a photo of Celeste, shaking hands with someone Elena didn't recognize. On the back, she knew more than she said. The photo on the table was silent, but loud in its suggestion. Celeste Kohlhart, shaking hands with a man in a gray suit. Unfamiliar face, but the same surname that appeared on the old blackmail letter from Adrian's father's file. Darwin Greaves, the same city official who had allegedly been coerced into approving shady real estate contracts for Martin Kohlhart. The photo had been taken just 2 months earlier at a City Hall fundraising dinner, an event covered by the local press but never linked to the Kohlharts until now. Adrian read the note taped to it again. She knew more than she said. The letter wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. It was a warning. And a question. How far did loyalty go when it was built on secrets? Elena sat across from Adrian at their kitchen table, a bowl of warm scones between them, the butter melting slowly. It should have been a peaceful afternoon, but peace doesn't sit well next to betrayal. She was protecting you, Elena said. She always has. Maybe this was her way of keeping control, before the truth burned everything down. Adrian didn't answer. He stared at the photo. I need to ask her myself. The confrontation happened in Celeste's apartment. High ceilings, old money, and not a single personal photo in sight. When Adrian walked in holding the image, Celeste was already standing by the window, as if she'd known. You had that photo taken, he said, calm but deliberate. I did, she replied, and I didn't hide it. You just didn't ask the right questions. He held up the paper. You met with Darwin Greaves. After everything. Why? Celeste finally turned, arms folded. Because I wanted to make sure he stayed quiet. I wanted your name and the company safe. You used Dad's silence to your advantage, Adrian said, the words heavy. You controlled the board with the one thing I never would have used, his shame. Celeste's voice didn't shake. I did what you couldn't, what you were too good to do. Adrian nodded slowly. Then, with quiet strength, he said, Then it's time for you to step down too. Celeste's resignation was private, quiet, but not without dignity. In her farewell memo, she included one line that made Elena pause when she read it aloud at home. The strongest leaders are not the ones who climb to the top, but the ones who know when it's time to pass the ladder down. She clipped the memo beside Adrian's original scholarship letter inside the black notebook, tucked now in a velvet box, to be stored for the Foundation's archives. 3 months later, the Marlowe Initiative launched in a small ceremony at an inner-city hospital. There were no paparazzi, no podium, no viral clips, just patients, families, nurses. And Adrian, standing quietly behind Elena as she gave the first speech. Her voice was calm but full. We don't always get to choose the legacy we inherit, she said. But we do get to decide which stories we carry forward and which ones we choose to rewrite. Soft applause, gentle tears. One nurse hugged her as if they'd known each other for years. That was the moment it all felt real. Back home after the launch, Ivy insisted they all celebrate. "Even if it's just with burnt brownies," she said, fanning the smoke from the oven as Mary shouted, "I told you not to use the top rack." They ate on the couch, barefoot and messy, the TV muted, the room filled with the kind of laughter that only comes when no one is pretending anymore. Adrian looked over at Elena, chocolate smudged on her chin. "You once told me you wanted a love that felt like breathing." She nodded. "Still do." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a ring. Simple, gold, elegant. "Then let's make it permanent." Elena blinked. "You didn't kneel." "I can," he said, already sliding off the couch with exaggerated groans. "Don't you dare throw out your back," Mary yelled from the kitchen. Adrian grinned. "Will you marry me, Elena Marlowe? Not because we survived the storm, but because we're learning to live in the calm." Elena laughed through her tears and said the easiest yes of her life. The wedding was quiet, just a garden, string lights, Ivy as the world's sassiest flower girl, Mary crying more than Elena. Adrian wore no tie, Elena wore no veil, just a cream dress, bare shoulders, and the bracelet on her wrist, the ladder, the lock, the star, the stone, and the silver circle. One charm for every battle they had fought, and won, together. After the ceremony, they danced beneath the trees. No cameras, no headlines, just music and the kind of love that doesn't need to be explained. "I don't want a fairy tale anymore," Elena whispered. "Good," Adrian said, "because this is better." 1 year later, the Marlowe Initiative funded its 10th hospital program. Elena and Adrian stood at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by patients, nurses, and a few board members with softened expressions. As the crowd clapped, Ivy, now 10, ran up and handed Elena a small gift. A box. Inside, a tiny charm shaped like a paper heart. "I made it," Ivy said, "because your love made the world softer." Elena held it in her palm. Her eyes met Adrian's. "We started with notebooks," she said. "Now, we're writing new endings." He kissed her forehead and slipped the charm onto the bracelet. The circle wasn't just closed, it was whole. The end. Sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in fairy tales, but in second chances. Handwritten notes, and a hand that still reaches for yours, even after the storms. Would you forgive someone who once walked away, if they came back ready to build a new ending with you? Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Elena? Tap like if this story touched you. Comment your favorite part, and rate the full story from 0 to 10. I'm waiting to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional journeys like this one. See you in the next story.